DC, Arlington. If you told me at the beginning of the season that DC was going to be an 8.5 point favorite in week 9 against Bob Stoops, I would have told you that's insane. You're underrating Arlington. I had them second in my power poll to start the year. I thought on paper this team was excellent, and they were my pick to win the XFL South. Could still happen. Surprisingly enough, this could still be an XFL championship game preview. Don't count out the Renegades quite yet. 7-1 against the spread for the Defenders. My record, like we mentioned on Thursday, 9-7 against the number. So over 3/4 of my wins on the season and my bankroll entirely is on DC. So I'll continue to ride, but this one I was a little hesitant on. Reason being, we aren't quite sure about Jordan Ta'amu's shoulder. So keep an eye on that, right? He was clearly in pain against Seattle. He had to come out for a few series and ultimately gutted out another 4-touchdown performance. But I have a feeling that this is the week for Jordan to rest a little bit, right? I'll tell you why. The shoulder is very sore. A.J. McCarron kind of dealing with the same thing. Anthony Beck taking a gamble and says, we really need to beat Seattle to make the playoffs. So let's give Nick Tiano a shot and see if we can do just barely enough to beat Vegas. Well, I'm wondering if Reggie Barlow will use that same mindset as Anthony Beck did and take the gamble, maybe start De'Aaron King instead of Jordan Ta'amu, give that shoulder some rest. There's still a home playoff game to be clinched for DC, but since you swept both St. Louis and Seattle, you only have to win one more game. So you have Arlington week 9, San Antonio week 10. You win one of those, you lock up a home playoff game. So maybe this is the Eric Dungey spot, right? You haven't had him get a shot at all this year, and if that De'Aaron King package has trouble, which it did a little bit last week with the fumble, maybe you go to Dungey for a bit if Jordan's not able to roll. Very good Arlington defense. They give up less than 75 yards on the ground, so kind of a counter to that DC rushing attack. It's a guy, though, and Eric Dungey, also a dual threat. He lit it up in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. Funny enough, if you saw my Twitter today, I was thinking back to old college matchups. I like to go into these games and think about who is meeting again in XFL 2023 that played an instant classic during their college days. Well, Eric Dungey in 2017, quarterbacking Syracuse to a miracle upset of number 2 Clemson back then. Guess who was the Tigers quarterback? Kelly Bryant. Left the game before halftime with a concussion, and his Tigers ultimately went on to lose that game. Now, they're not expected to start, but Kelly Bryant is on the Renegades, and Eric Dungey is on the Defenders. So a couple things go their way. They may see themselves thrown into action. It could be destiny. But like we said, the DC run game definitely about to face the toughest challenge of the season. Abram Smith, Rykel Armstead, they've been a great 1-2 tandem all year, but definitely going to have their work cut out for them. Running up against guys in that front 7. Josiah Coatney, TJ Barnes, the big fella, Will Clark. Now, some devastating news for the Arlington Renegades. Bob Stoops telling us in the press conference that Donald Payne, their leading tackler, has been shut down for the season. High ankle sprain. So that's tough. The secondary's been solid, though. They picked Quentin Dormady off a few times last week. They actually lead the league with 19 takeaways. And it's like a little half and half, honestly. It's not all picks. It's a half picks, half fumbles type deal. So don't expect DC to go off for 40 points here. I think there's going to be a lot of hard-fought yards that need to be gained. Flipping to the other side of the ball, Luis Perez, now of the Renegades. Listen, the Defenders have been a thorn in his side all season. And if you're Luis Perez, this is the 3rd time you're starting against Greg Williams, who loves to just come after the quarterback. And the first time, he got benched in a loss back in week 2, that disgusting rain game out in Cashman Field. Second time, he played a little bit better, but I'm sure Perez still has bad memories of that goal line play where right before the half, he's rolled in, Blandino comes down, reverses it, Rod Woodson loses his mind. Like, that's a tough play for a quarterback's confidence to take away a touchdown from him. Luis Perez, I can't imagine he has any trouble finding motivation for this one. DC has been tough for him, but look at Arlington. One of the worst teams in the league against the number, 2-6. They're also 2-6 to the over. And found a weird stat. In away games, they're 2-2 against the spread, which tells me they're 0-4 in the hub. What? This is exactly the opposite of what I thought would happen at the beginning of the season. It was a big reason why I picked Arlington so high in my projections. You're playing at home. You got the facilities right there. That's a built-in advantage in this league where every other team is traveling every week unless they're playing you. So the 4 times the other teams in the hub got to stay home and play at Arlington, they're 0-4 against the number. So it's not been pretty for the Renegades or the Renefades, whatever you want to call them. You should be pretty confident in DC this week. Just take a look at Jordan Ta'amu's status and follow me on Twitter. I'll have it for you. What else do we know about Arlington? Davion Smith has been running pretty hard. They have to be better inside the red zone, settling for too many field goals, especially for a DC team who's 4-0 against the spread at home. Pretty incredible number there. Taylor Russolino's a good kicker, so you can rely on him for 3 points, but 3 points ain't going to beat the best team in the league. Letty Brown, I thought, has been a great addition to a backfield who simply went through so many guys. Smith is like the last one standing. Went through Adrian Killens, went through Keith Ford, Kenneth Farrow on the IR. It's just a rotating stable of backs, and now they got pretty solid with Brown and Smith here. Finally finding a balance. They have some flashy receivers, but none that really blow you away. The way those burners on DC between Chris Blair and Lucky Jackson have just blown away everybody who did not expect them to burst onto the scene the way they did. Of course, my DC Defenders are going to be the pick here, Zook. I know I said I was a little hesitant to potentially, you don't even have to put those on one at a time. I think it was pretty obvious what we're going here. I'm more concerned about the spread and your thoughts on the spread, Zook, than I am the straight up pick. I've been riding DC all year. I was only a little hesitant because Jordan is on such a roll. And if you don't have Jordan, what are you going to rely on? You're going to rely on the run game. Well, the Arlington Renegades, the best run defense in the league, allowing less than 75 a game, like we mentioned. So is this the Eric Dungy spot? Who he can throw it around too. I'm not knocking King's arm. He's thrown a couple touchdowns this year. I think he's capable, but it's tough when you haven't started all year to go in and do it. If Jordan plays, I'd be confident of laying the 8.5 with DC. They've been a total wagon this year. Zook, any thoughts on this cover potentially? Is this a spot you look to back DC just blindly, knowing that they've covered all season?
No, I think it depends on the starter. King has proven from last week being in that he's going to turn the ball over sometimes. Jordan has taken care of the ball a lot better.
Right.
It comes down to a turnover battle. So this is another game I want to stay away until if you're going to bet, it's going to be last minute just to find out.
That's a good point as well. Some of these numbers have moved. Like I was shocked last week. I got Houston at 4. It moved to 6.5. Like that was one I would have been detrimental. I lost anyway, but I would have been so mad at myself if I waited for 6.5. The lines are pretty sturdy this week. They haven't gone anywhere. I expect people are awaiting AJ McCarron news in this next game. But as far as the DC game goes, you can wait this out. We haven't had too many practice reports this week so far. See what's up with Jordan Ta'amu. I'd be comfortable laying the points if he's going to go. Even if he's not 100%, he could play through pain. He's a tough guy. Mikey Manziel also going with DC, who won him some money last week, surprisingly enough.